Alright. What's up? Again, it's me. It's Dre. So, guess it's kind of a reaction video. It's the luckiest people who survive the impossible. Looks like we got some interesting stuff here, so without further ado, we're gonna check this out, see how this goes. Let's go out the way. Let's get it.
Stephen McCormack. Stephen, an experienced truck driver from New Zealand, was working on his truck. He was positioned between the truck's bumper and the trailer when something crazy happened. He slipped and fell, but something felt off. He didn't feel just regular pain. He felt his body inflating like a balloon, nearly doubling in size. His colleagues and his son rushed to help him, quickly realizing what had actually happened. Stephen had fallen onto the brass valve that supplies
It went in his ass? Hold on. Go back a few. Hold on.
Realizing what had actually happened. Stephen had fallen onto the brass valve that supplies compressed air to the truck's brakes.
He fell on the truck's compressed air that goes into the brakes. You heard that. He fell into it and it went into his butthole. It inflated his body. That's fucking insane.
The valve punctured his bum, forcing pressurized air into his body. They immediately shut off the air supply, laid him on the ground, and called an ambulance. Unfortunately, both emergency vehicles in the area were occupied, forcing him to wait in that state for an entire hour. When he finally arrived at the hospital, doctors understood the severity of his condition. The air had separated fat tissue from muscle, filling his abdomen, chest, and even the spaces around his lungs, heart, and behind his eyelids. To help him breathe, doctors inserted a tube through his ribs and into his lungs. As for the trapped air, it had to be expelled naturally through farts, a process that took 3 days.
Okay. It's not funny, but it is funny that get the fart for 3 days to get the air out. Having the air behind his eyes and in between his lungs and heart and all that. Crazy. He survived though. Remember, these are people who survive the impossible.
Stephen made a full recovery, and doctors later determined that if the valve had punctured another part of his body, it could have damaged a blood vessel, and he would have died.
Wow.
Joan Murray.
So, he got lucky. It's not funny, but he got lucky it went in his ass. Instead of stabbing him in the legs, if it was stabbed him anywhere else, it would have killed him. But because it went up his ass.
Joan Murray was an experienced skydiver, having already completed 35 jumps. It was supposed to be just another routine dive, and as she plummeted at 120 miles per hour, she attempted to deploy her parachute. I say attempted because it didn't open. After multiple tries, she reached for her reserve parachute, which, to her relief, deployed successfully. However, another problem quickly arose. She began spinning uncontrollably, causing the parachute's cords to tangle into a knot, rendering it useless. She crashed into the ground at 80 miles per hour, and upon impact, she heard a loud crack before losing consciousness. Joan fell into a coma and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors performed multiple complex reconstructive surgeries and blood transfusions. The entire right side of her body was crushed, yet incredibly, 2 weeks later, she woke up from the coma.
Oh, so she fell sideways. I thought it was flat. She fell sideways, crushed that whole side of her body. Damn, think about that. You've seen like the crash test dummy things when they're like going like 50, 60 miles an hour and they jerk and slamming the stuff. Think about that. Your body's falling straight out the ground, out of the sky, ground. Jesus.
And made a full recovery. The reason she survived was just crazy. By pure chance, she landed directly on a fire ant nest, disturbing the venomous ants. In response, they came out of their nests and swarmed her body, stinging and biting her over 200 times. Fire ant venom, known as solanopsin, stimulates the nervous system. The overwhelming amount of it that was injected into her body kept her heart beating until paramedics arrived, saving her life.
That's crazy. I thought she survived because she landed sideways. So, like her body being crushed, like kind of softened it so the rest of her body didn't, just splat you know. But it's because she landed on a damn anthill, and the ants attacked her full force apparently, and she got bitten over 200 times. Yo, that's a hell of a way to survive something. Because don't ant bites that many ants doesn't that kill people sometimes? Or most of the time whenever stuff like that happens? I don't know, but that's crazy. That's that's call it whatever you want to call it. But to be falling at that speed, 80 miles an hour, slammed to the ground on your side, crushed your entire body, and the only way you survived was because ants attacked you because you landed on their anthill, and their venom kept your body beating, your heart beating, when you should have been dead for paramedics to arrive. That's crazy.
Margaret Guire. Margaret was a young Canadian woman who had just married her husband, Herbert, in 1915. To celebrate, they decided to take a trip and boarded the RMS Lusitania in New York City, bound for Liverpool. They were enjoying their trip, having a routine dinner on the ship, when suddenly they heard a loud boom. The ship had been torpedoed by a German submarine. Herbert immediately escorted his wife Margaret to a lifeboat, where she was joined by 3 other women and a baby. However, as she looked up, she saw the ship's massive smokestacks above them, and she feared they might collapse onto their lifeboat. In a moment of panic, she climbed back up the stairs to the deck, while Herbert, believing she was safe, boarded another lifeboat with other passengers. As the Lusitania rapidly sank, Margaret tried to swim away from the wreckage, but her efforts were in vain. A whirlpool formed as the ship submerged, pulling her and 2 other men into one of the smokestacks. Miraculously, a sudden explosion from below blasted her back to the surface, where she was spotted and rescued by a nearby lifeboat. As she looked around, she saw Herbert in another lifeboat, crying, believing she had died. Julie McSorley.
Should I eat that? Peanut butter cup thing. What I was gonna say is, stay hydrated, folks. Before that, she got cannonballed to safety. Just her. Think about that. They all went down that smokestack, but an explosion happens and the pressure from it shoots just her out of it. That's, I don't know how that works, for one. 2, that doesn't make any kind of sense. It's clearly real because it's a true story that happened. I wonder what happened to the other dudes. I mean, I'm assuming they didn't survive since they didn't mention them. But were they stuck on something? Like what happens in there? Because I assume they were stuck in there. That would cause her to, I guess maybe because she was smaller, because they were 2 men, and the explosion and the pressure was enough to push her out. But I guess the way they were, I don't know, stuffed in there, I guess.
Julie McSorley and Liz Cottrell were kayaking in San Luis Obispo, California, drawn by a spectacular event, humpback whales feeding on fish in the bay. There were lots of tourists on their boats and kayaks watching the whole thing. And even though whale watching is a popular activity, it comes with important safety precautions.
Whale watching
Experts recommend staying at least 300 feet away from the feeding zone to avoid dangerous encounters. Unfortunately, Julie and Liz misjudged the distance. A tightly packed swarm of fish, known as a bait ball, suddenly moved alarmingly close to them. But they weren't the only ones to notice. Their presence had also caught the attention of a humpback whale. Before they had time to react, the whale lunged forward to swallow the fish, but in the process, it also scooped up Julie and Liz. Trapped inside its massive mouth, they probably thought that they were about to be swallowed whole. After all, humpback whales can grow up to 56 feet long, a huge size from a human perspective. However, despite their enormous mouths, humpback whales have relatively small throats, only about the size of a human fist, and capable of stretching to just 15 inches in diameter. They also lack teeth, meaning the 2 women weren't crushed. Luckily, a whale's natural instinct is to spit out anything that isn't fish, and that's exactly what happened. Moments later, Julie and Liz were spat out from the whale's mouth and surfaced unharmed. Matthew Lowe.
That's not that bad. That's not that bad then. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. I thought thought it was gonna be way worse. What they said, how small the throat was, but that's not that bad. It seems like they got out of that relatively safe. That's cool. It sounded like it was gonna suck, or that I don't know how strong a whale's tongue is, but because it's huge, I didn't know maybe that it was in there. So it's like I need to get this down my throat. Let me crush everything that's in here, and then like swallow it. But apparently, whales don't do that. If there's some in their throat that they won't go down through, they just spit it out. Makes sense. Like that makes a lot of sense.
Matthew was heading to his factory for a routine shift, just like any other day. Upon arriving, he immediately got to work. As he walked past an automated conveyor belt, he suddenly felt his overalls snag on something. Unfortunately, it was the conveyor itself. Before he could react, he was pulled onto the belt and dragged toward a 5-inch opening. Within seconds, his entire body was forced through the narrow tunnel. He could hear the cracks of his bones as the machine spat him out on the other side. Miraculously, he remained conscious. Matthew's agonizing screams alerted his coworkers, who rushed to the scene. What they saw was horrifying. His back was broken in 2 places, his pelvis, ribs, and hips were nearly completely crushed, and his abdomen was severely torn. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors had little hope for his survival. They even advised his partner to prepare for the worst. However, against all odds, Matthew survived. After 6 surgeries and a month in the hospital, he slowly began to recover. 18 months later, he made a full recovery and even returned to work. Taiba.
Yo, hold on. His ribs were completely crushed. His back was all broken up. His pelvic bone almost completely crushed, they said, and everything, all his little midsection area torn to shreds. Only 6 surgeries. That seems like not that many for the situation to happen. Then 18 months and he was back? Boy. He had a hyperbolic time chamber or something, because completely crushed, mangled, 6 surgeries in less than 2 years, 18 months, a year and 6 months, and my guy was back at work. Not just recovered, being able to walk and doing physical therapy, completely recovered, completely back at work. Bro, homie's got like a healing factor or something, because that's fucking crazy.
Taiba, a young Indian girl, went out for a walk when she came across a construction site. Intrigued, she decided to explore the area. The site was filled with debris and half-finished structures, making it extremely risky to navigate, especially without proper equipment or experience. As she walked through the site, she tripped and fell neck first onto a long metal rod protruding from a brick. Bystanders witnessed the horrifying scene and immediately called for an ambulance. When Taiba arrived at the hospital, doctors were left stunned. Miraculously, the rod had missed all vital nerves and blood vessels in her head.
Wow.
After a 35-minute surgery, doctors successfully removed the rod. Amazingly, she was discharged just 3 days later. Had she fallen just a few inches further forward, she would have died. Frain Selak.
Hold on. 35 minutes. That's it. 35 minutes. And it said, what, how many weeks later?
Doctors successfully removed
Days
the rod.
later, right?
Amazingly, she was discharged
3 days later, discharged. Hit a pipe, go through her fucking skull, miss everything. A 35-minute surgery. Like, that's just like going in and getting stitches. Like, cut yourself, kid falls on a bike or something, they go get like 5, 6 stitches, maybe 3 stitches, something like that. No, it don't take long. 35 minutes. And 3 days later, good to go. That's crazy. After falling face first, the pipe go through your shit and out.
just 3 days later. Had she fallen just a few inches further forward, she would have died. Frain Selak. Frain Selak is an elderly music teacher from Croatia, and he's both the luckiest and unluckiest man on earth. His first crazy experience happened in 1962 when he was on a train. A fault in the tracks caused the train to derail and plunge into the freezing river below. Most passengers either died in the crash or drowned in the submerged train, but Frayne miraculously survived with only a broken arm and managed to swim to shore. In 1963, just a year after the train incident, he was on a small plane when, mid-flight, both engines failed. As the aircraft went into a free fall, a malfunctioning door blew open, yanking Frayne out of the plane. Without a parachute, he must have thought he was going to die. The plane crashed into a hill, killing all 19 passengers on board. However, Frayne survived by landing on a haystack, escaping with only minor injuries. 2 years later, in 1965, he was...
Wait. He gets out of a train and falls in the water. Everybody else dies. He only has a broken arm. Swims to safety. Gets ripped out of a fucking falling plane and thrown into a haystack. That's some shit out of a movie or a video game. And survives when everyone else dies. Minor injuries. That's nuts.
Traveling on a bus that was crossing a bridge. The icy conditions caused the bus's wheels to lock up, sending the vehicle crashing through the safety barrier and into the valley below. 4 passengers lost their lives, yet Frayne survived once again. After multiple accidents involving public transportation, he decided to rely on his own car, only to find that it wasn't any safer. In 1970, while driving, his engine suddenly burst into flames. Miraculously, he managed to jump out in time and survived, but this wasn't his only brush with fire. 3 years later, in 1973, while driving another car, the fuel pump ruptured, causing yet another fire. This time, the flames were blown directly toward him through the air vents. Despite suffering burns, he once again managed to escape. As if that weren't enough, in 1975, he survived being hit by a bus. Then, just a year later, he had another near-death experience when his car fell off a mountain road, plummeting 300 feet after a careless driver forced him off the road. The car exploded upon impact, but Frayne managed to survive by jumping out of the vehicle's window mid-fall and landing on a tree. And by the way, he won the lottery in 2003. If you liked this video,
hold the fuck on. Hold up. That's some Final Destination type shit. All that shit happening the way it happened, and that's some Final Destination type shit. And then in the end, that's just like, you know what? I can't kill him. Here's some money. That's dude, that is fucking nuts. That is fucking nuts. Train. Swimming fucking safety. Falling out of a plane. A bus crashing. Everybody dying except for him. Getting a car and having multiple of them randomly explode. Having somebody knock you off of a fucking mountain. And surviving all of it. That is some fucking Final Destination shit. That's it. Final Destination movies were based off him. That's just all there is to it. All of those Final Destination movies based off that dude, because that's the only way that shit makes sense. And Death gave up on him. It's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna give him a lotto ticket and he'll just die of old age, I guess. Like I'm done with him. I've tried. I tried to. So if I can't kill him with all this other shit, that's fucking crazy. That's dope though. Again, that is so dope. If you guys enjoyed that, thank you. Hey, I'll say some stuff I don't normally say, as you see here. If you guys like, if you watched it and you liked it, you know, give me a like, give me a subscribe. You know, if you didn't like it, hey, again, you know, I understand. Still appreciate the watch. Even a dislike helps out, you know, any kind of engagement. All good. Again, thank you very much for watching. And if you liked it, maybe a thumbs up would be cool. If you didn't like it, hit me with a thumbs down. That's cool too. I get it. Again, thank you for watching. We got some more stuff coming. Peace.